Tonight, the plans to clamp down on disposable vapes. A safer alternative for people stopping smoking, but they're also environmentally damaging, cheap and addictive.
Just chuck them away and buy another one. And they're not too dear, do you know what I mean? They're alright for what they are.
A lot of people that get into it don't smoke in the first place, so it's an easy way to get into it when you're not into it before.
Also making the headlines, the UK government will not intervene. The Scottish Secretary says he won't stand in the way of a pilot scheme for drug consumption rooms in Glasgow.
Crumbling concrete closes down yet another public building. Motherwell Concert Hall cancels all events.
I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. For those trying to stop smoking, vaping is seen as a safer alternative to cigarettes. But it still usually delivers a big nicotine hit. That makes vaping just as addictive as smoking. And disposable vapes are now hugely popular among Scotland's teenagers. Medics say we're creating a new generation of nicotine addicts.
The UK government held talks today with the Scottish government as health ministers in London and Edinburgh look towards a ban. Critics say disposable vapes are overwhelmingly aimed at people under the age of 18. There's also concern about the environmental impact of a throwaway product. Caroline Lewis reports.
A nicotine product marketed at children. That's the medical opinion swaying government action. Yesterday, it was suggested ministers in Westminster were making moves to ban disposable vapes, and soon.
I think it's healthier than smoking, but a lot of people that get into it don't smoke in the first place, so it's an easy way to get into it when you're not into it before.
So it shouldn't be labelling vapes for 16-year-old children and 15, because that's who's realistically getting them, isn't it?
Vaping caught on as a safer alternative to cigarettes, but has exploded in recent years. On average, youngsters are picking up the habit between the ages of 13 and 15.
It's not just harmless water, it's not just food additives. There are chemicals, there are aldehydes, there's metals, heavy metals in the vaping devices that we know cause inflammatory changes in the lungs. I don't think we should be making the same mistake of just assuming that it is safer because we don't see long-term effects that we see in cigarette smokers purely because vaping has not been around that long.
But the UK isn't the first to consider calling time on disposable vapes. Just this month, France announced its plan to bar certain products, while Germany has already halted flavoured e-cigarettes, and both disposable vapes and marketing to children have been stopped in New Zealand. But Australia has cracked down the hardest, where now all types of vapes are completely banned unless you have a prescription. But those in the industry say the issue is regulation and are calling on both the UK and Scottish government to enforce stricter licensing to make vapes harder to buy.
Australia's a very good example to use where they have brought in a flat ban, but without any sort of substance or plan around how that is managed and enforced. And what you have in Australia now is a black market that is massive. It far exceeds the legitimate market of vaping products, but that is unpoliced and unregulated.
A ban will take some time to bring into place, and there are more urgent things that we can do immediately to help mitigate the issues, including helping make sure that young people can't get a hold of these. We should have discussions around whether it's appropriate to have sweet flavours, bright colours, whether we need to talk to manufacturers about how they design and how these products are marketed.
Today, ministers met with their UK counterparts over a potential collaboration, whether they can agree whether disposable vapes should be disposed of for good. Caroline Lewis, STV News.
The Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack says while the UK government doesn't support a pilot project for a drug consumption room in Glasgow, he won't stand in its way. Political editor Colin Mackay joins us now. And Colin, how significant is this?
Well, this has been the big political story of the week. It's been on the news, near the top of the news agenda every night so far. The Lord Advocate's statement on Monday giving the green light to a pilot drug consumption room, that was absolutely huge. The biggest potential barrier remaining now seems to have been the UK government, who are resolutely opposed to the idea of drug consumption rooms. And today it came up at Scottish Questions in the Commons.
Both cross-party committees of this House are very clear that the evidence shows that these measures could be life-saving. So when will he act to save lives in Scotland by persuading his government to drop their intransigence on this issue?
Drug consumption rooms are not the easy solution honourable members may think. There is no safe way to take illegal drugs. Drugs, they devastate lives, they ruin families, they damage communities. And the UK government believes that the police and the Procurator Fiscal Service should fully enforce the law. However, and I say this to the Honourable Lady, however, if the Scottish Government and the Lord Advocate decide to proceed with a pilot on DCRs, drugs consumption rooms, the UK Government will not intervene.
So, huge from the Lord Advocate this week, but that's pretty big from Alistair Jack as well, because he clearly doesn't support this plan. And let's face it, he's the most interventionist Scottish Secretary that we've had since devolution. Think about him blocking gender reforms last year and glass recycling, both backed by the Scottish Parliament here. But today he says that he will not block this. So this drug consumption room pilot will be agreed by councillors and health officials on the 27th of September. They will then announce a consultation on the plans. That's when the Lord Advocate is expected to issue new prosecution guidelines. And then the first drug consumption room in the UK could be up and running. Supporters hope saving lives before Christmas.
And briefly, Colin, also movement on the school strike this evening.
Absolutely. A letter from COSLA to the three trade unions tonight. They say they're making a strong offer, even stronger. I'm not sure that maybe they're making a bad situation worse, because what they've come up with is an extra £10 million. Now, as far as I can see, the unions, each of them, Unison, Unite and the GMB, are going to kick that completely into touch. I'm not sure that's even enough for them to put to their members in another vote. So at the moment, it looks like those school strikes will go ahead at the end of the month.
Colin, at the Scottish Parliament, thank you.
Ferry cancellations to and from the Isle of Mull have lost businesses there hundreds of thousands of pounds and is damaging tourism. That's the charge levelled by locals to CalMac and the Scottish Government as they call for urgent targeted funding to boost visitor numbers after a disappointing summer.
CalMac says the issues have been short-term and they're committed to providing passengers with the best possible service. Our political reporter has been to Mull to find out more, and Laura Alderman experienced the disruption firsthand.
Mull's tourists fuel its economy, and most of the 600,000 people who come here every year arrive by CalMac ferry from Oban.
Well worth the journey, and no hiccups at all. Smooth as smooth can be.
But when that ferry service fails, staff here often step in to get visitors back to the mainland.
The biggest frustration we've got is when people turn up and they're coming that day and they get turned away in Oban. There's nobody there to turn around and say, park your car up. You can go on the ferry, you can walk, there's buses, you'll get to where you're going, you just need to do it a different way. That communication is not there. The government's not going to help us, CalMac can't help us, so we've got to help ourselves.
90% of the sailings on this route do run on time, but when they don't, it causes big issues.
The whole year has just been chaos, and you're lucky to get off the island when you want without a huge queue. It really isn't working for anyone at the moment.
Well, I do a lot of off-island pickups and deliveries and all the rest of it, and just with like boat cancellations and stuff like that, kind of prevents me from getting home some nights, you know, and I've got to get back for my son.
Despite a successful start to the year, hotel manager Gemma says a string of ferry breakdowns in the spring led to a fall in summer trade.
It's really had a devastating impact on our business. We've lost hundreds of thousands of pounds as a business, and one of the largest hospitality businesses on the island. We've had some visitors that have had to stay overnight in their car on the other side of the island, or on the other side of the mainland, due to the fact that they couldn't get a ferry, or the ferries were cancelled at the last minute.
Tourism is the cornerstone of the economy here on Mull, but locals say it's been damaged, perhaps permanently, by the ferry disruption. Now they're calling on the Scottish Government to urgently intervene and provide a package of support to encourage visitors back to the island.
We have the skills, but we don't have the monetary resources to offset the damage that this latest disruption has caused. And I don't want to just sit and watch our visitor economy drift away.
The Scottish Government says it's committed to investing in ferry services, and there will be 6 new vessels in the network by the end of the parliamentary session. Today, CalMac published its long-awaited winter timetable, which opens for bookings on the 4th of October. Businesses here on Mull will be hoping that can restore visitor confidence.
And Laura joins us now. And Laura, you were caught up in the cancellations yourself, weren't you?
Yes, that's right. But first of all, I should point out that my sailing over to Mull from Oban ran completely smoothly, no delays, no cancellations. And that is the case for the vast majority of CalMac ferries. But of course, cancellation and disruption does happen. I was told just 25 minutes before the sailing that the service was cancelled. The next ferry and the final ferry of the evening was fully booked. And I couldn't actually book on another ferry to leave the island until 9 p.m. the next night. So instead, I took the only other route, one that locals have to use very often when the ferries are cancelled. We've got a map of that here. It involved a different ferry crossing over to Loch Allen on the mainland, and then a trip up to Ardgour, where I then found out that the Corran ferry was also not running. Now, that would have been a 5-minute ferry journey, but instead I had to drive up and round past Fort William, a 42-mile detour, and then finally back down to Oban. In total, a 3.5-hour drive for what should have been a 45-minute ferry crossing. Now, I just experienced a glimmer of what it's like for islanders day in, day out. I can only imagine if you were in a rush to get to the mainland for a doctor's appointment or some kind of emergency. As you heard in my report there, it really is a frustration amongst people in these islands, but when it runs, it's great. As they said, it needs to be reformed, it needs to be revised. It feels like it's just not working for anyone.
That's quite a journey. All right then. Well, thanks very much for telling us all about that, Laura. Thank you.
To other stories, peak fares on ScotRail are being scrapped for a 6-month trial period. From October, passengers will be able to buy an off-peak ticket anytime.
The number of people behind bars is expected to soar within the next year, according to the Chief Inspector of Prisons. A new report shows inmate numbers dropped during the pandemic, but are likely to go above 8,000.
Police Scotland is warning it could have to make compulsory redundancies. The force's Deputy Chief Officer says it could have to cut 800 posts next year if its budget isn't increased. The first flight from Scotland to Morocco since the nation was hit by an earthquake which killed thousands and displaced many more has taken off. On board, people concerned about loved ones, those going to help, and a few holidaymakers.
It's as aid efforts get underway here to provide help both in Morocco and in Libya, which has been hit by flooding. Lewis Mickey reports.
The first flight from Edinburgh to Marrakesh since Friday's earthquake, which has thus far claimed nearly 3,000 lives. The Foreign Office isn't advising against travelling to Morocco, but does say to check with your airline and accommodation provider before setting off. There's been a steady stream of passengers going through checkout this morning, some tourists and others Moroccan nationals.
We have contact permanent, WhatsApp, everybody, we have the contact. We check about our houses. We are owner of houses in Medina, Riyadh. But ours is good.
We checked with the hotel and we checked with Ryanair and they're flying. The airport seems to be okay. Hotel has been surveyed and it's fine. So that's it. And we feel if we didn't go then, and if everyone thought the same as we did, then their whole economy would be affected.
It's not just Morocco dealing with a natural disaster. In Libya, more than 5,000 have died due to flooding. Both have prompted major aid efforts here in Scotland.
So Islamic Relief are working with partners on the ground delivering vital aid. As you can imagine, the scale of the destruction is vast, and our aid efforts are going towards focusing on shelter as well as water, clean drinking water and food to provide safety and dignity to those that have survived.
Lewis Mickey, STV News.
Motherwell Concert Hall and Theatre has cancelled all performances and closed with immediate effect after the discovery of potentially dangerous crumble-prone concrete. It's the latest public building to confirm the presence of what is known as RAC. Ollie Dickinson reports.
North Lanarkshire Council says a full intrusive survey is being carried out on the building after initial surveys confirmed the presence of RAC, which may have been compromised in the roof after water entered the building. As a precaution, they've cancelled all shows and performances until further notice. The building, which was opened in the 70s, underwent a significant programme of refurbishment in 2010, costing £6 million, and is the latest building in Scotland to be closed. The University of Stirling confirmed it had closed part of its Students' Union building after discovering rack, whilst 16 local authorities have confirmed the presence of the building material in schools. It's also been revealed that 14 fire stations in Scotland also have the potentially dangerous concrete. Now, rack was widely used in the 50s and 60s as part of large-scale building projects. Its use continued sporadically until the 90s, and concerns about the material were first raised in 2018 when the roof of a school building in Kent collapsed with little or no warning. The Scottish Government has previously said that robust guidance is in place for buildings where rack has been found to make sure they're safe to be used by pupils, staff and the public. Ollie Dickinson, STV News, Motherwell.
Other stories in the West, and 2 people have been charged in connection with a fatal crash in Glasgow earlier this year which took the life of a student. 33-year-old Chinenye Okonkwo died when she was struck by a car on St Vincent Street on the 2nd of February. Police say a 29-year-old woman and a 28-year-old man have been arrested and released, pending further inquiry. Nearly 1,000 support staff at Scottish universities have walked out in a pay dispute. The industrial action is taking place at 5 universities, including Glasgow and Strathclyde. Unite, the union, claims workers are being faced with real terms pay cut. The Universities and Colleges Employers Association says its offer supports the lowest paid.
It's the technicians, the cleaners, the joiners, the janitors, your estate staff, the gardeners. These aren't people on huge salaries. We're already people living hand to mouth. So we really need that extra pay so that people can afford to live.
Volunteers at one of Glasgow's most loved local projects are urging the First Minister to step in and save its future. Lottery funding at the Hidden Gardens in Pollock Shields has been unexpectedly pulled. Courtney Cameron reports.
It's a hidden sanctuary that's been at the heart of the city for 20 years. With the news there's no longer the funding to keep its learning initiatives and volunteering scheme afloat, the local community say they're heartbroken.
I mean, you can come here thinking you're going to do gardening all the time, but it's more than that. We're a group that we've all gelled and everybody comes from all different paths in life, you know. So
we were really very emotional when we were told about it, you know. It's taken a while for it to sink in.
It was the 20th anniversary of the Hidden Gardens Saturday a week ago, and we had 1,000 people come into the gardens.
Priya moved to Glasgow from India last year. If it hadn't been for volunteering here, she says she wouldn't have made friends.
It made me richer in so many aspects. I got experiences of others, I got friendships of others, and that's why today is the last day and we all have tears in our eyes.
Are you really sad?
I'm heartbroken, and that's why I said that, we didn't know that this program is ending, but if it is ending, we are not going to let it go without putting up a fight.
Around 40 people have previously helped to maintain the gardens, which are situated at the back of the Tramway Theatre in the city's south side. But from now on, it will be managed by a single gardener and limited staff until new funding is secured.
We're 100% dependent on funds from grant makers and donations from individuals. So we hope come the start of the next growing season that we'll have the funds in place again to create opportunities for local people to come back, help us keep the gardens going and nurture it.
The volunteers have written to the First Minister with the hope he'll be able to help. In the meantime, they say they'll continue to do all they can to save this much-loved garden that many call a lifeline. Courtney Cameron, STV News, Glasgow.
Nat Phillips says he's relishing the high expectations placed on him by Celtic fans as he settles into life at Parkhead. The central defender has joined the club on a 6-month loan deal from Liverpool, and he says the move is a great opportunity to play games regularly. He's one of 9 summer signings at Celtic, and Nat Phillips is eager to make his mark at his new surroundings. The central defender made the switch to the champions after finding game time limited at Liverpool.
Ultimately in the transfer window I knew that I needed to get
playing games regularly somewhere, and Celtic has given me a great opportunity to do that at a good level and at a huge club, one with a stadium that's always packed full of passionate fans, which as a player that's what you want to be doing. You want to be playing in those atmospheres, and at a club who have aspirations and high expectations.
Phillips joined Celtic days before they faced Rangers. He wasn't fit enough to make his debut, but he did take in the game at Ibrox.
I had to watch it from inside, so you could obviously hear the atmosphere, but I didn't get to see it for myself. It's obviously got a huge reputation, that game, and I think, like I said earlier, the lads did well to get the result. Obviously I wanted to be in and around the dressing room, in amongst the boys, taking it all in. Inside the media room itself wasn't as fun as it might have been in the stands, but at the same time it might not have been that fun in the stands as probably the only Celtic person in a stand.
The defender could be in the squad to face Dundee on Saturday. And that, folks, is all your sport tonight. I'll see you again tomorrow.
All right, thanks very much, Rahman. OK, let's get the weather now with Sean.
Things are hotting up. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
A very good evening to you. Well, Mother Nature put on a great light display last night, as you would expect, much stronger across the Isle of Lewis. We've got a great view of it here, but even across parts of Renfrewshire and Inverclyde, we managed to see it spreading all the way south into parts of Ayrshire and also the borders. Now, if you like, looking out for the Northern Lights, good news for you, because we're heading towards a solar maximum this winter and next winter, so I expect there's a very good chance that we'll get to see plenty of them this winter and next winter. Things getting a lot more active over the coming years. Low pressure around, autumnal weather tonight, so you'll see nothing, no stars, cloud, outbreaks of rain for many of us. Very autumnal evening, blustery with some heavy bursts of rain and particularly windy across the northwest. The risk of some gales across the Hebrides and the far northwest coast. Now with the cloud, the rain, the stronger winds, it will be a lot milder. Yes, it won't feel like it if you pop out in that wind. 10, 11 degrees Celsius overnight tonight. That's still about 50 degrees in Fahrenheit. Not the 4s and 5s we've seen in recent nights, but yes, as I say, rather chilly in that wind. Now tomorrow, still quite a breezy old start to the day. There'll be a few scattered showers around, but most of those showers easing during the afternoon. So for many of us, it will be a dry, sunny afternoon. And if you can get out of the breeze, hopefully not feeling too bad, especially towards Falkirk, Clackmannanshire highs about 17, 18 degrees Celsius. On Friday, cloudiest in the south with outbreaks of rain, also rather chilly. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And that is all from us. But don't forget, Rona will have Scotland tonight just after the late news.
From all of us here, thank you for watching. Have a good night.
Good night.